Let's all take a breath together. Breathe together, and welcome to this class that Lewis and I have been looking forward to for quite a while. Subject that, gosh, when I, going back a few years now, when I first visited Lewis and saw a grid he was working with on, not specifically on divine consciousness, not specifically on Christ consciousness, but the heavenly virtues. And I was like, what's this? And he took me through it and so on. Excited for this, but let's just start as we always start by an opening prayer. Beloved Mother, Father, God, Goddess, sweet essence of love, of light, of vitality, purity, sweetness from source, we welcome you into this space, to the space where each of us sits, around all of us. As we together, we connect to the earth below, Mother Earth below. As we connect to the Father Sky above. For as we come to learn, to receive, we also come to be calibrated, to be attuned. We call to the loving angels all around us, to present us with clarity, love, and light. We call to our higher selves, with the intention that all we need and all the grace come through to our physical work, to our human life. We're calling forth the very highest good of our time together this evening. Welcoming beloved Maitreya, beloved Archangel Uriel, beloved Archangel Gabriel, to support us onward on our soul's path for all that we need and all that we don't yet know that we need. We say in love and humility and service, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. So here we are on the new moon. We have a stellium as well, and I'm going to let Lewis speak more to that than I. He's more eloquent. I looked at some of the people that are joining us today, and some of you haven't joined a class with Lewis and I before. You're either meeting me for the first time or Lewis. I always like actions to speak rather than introductions. No one remembers introductions anyway. But suffice to say, we both love and are very devoted to this particular subject. Not just teaching, but this particular subject that we're working with this evening. Towards the end of this class, I will allow my body to be used as a channel for spirit. That is to say, higher energies are going to come through me and make a lot more sense than I usually do. And I'm saying this because I did see a couple of you that I'm very grateful have joined and have not seen me channel before. And there isn't the time to get into a conversation about channeling and so on, because we've got quite a bit to cover this evening. We're going to be covering an unusually broad spectrum of experience this evening. And what I'm trying to say what I'm sugarcoating saying there is there may be a couple of things this evening that push your buttons. There is absolutely no intention to push buttons. Not for the sake of pushing buttons, absolutely not. The intention here, first, foremost, and every single word that I speak or Lewis speaks is with the intention of connecting with divine consciousness, your divine consciousness. If the buttons get pushed, it's because of the things that are in the way. And part of our job and role and so on, all of our role as spiritual warriors, metaphysicians, whatever you want to call us, is to engage wholly with all of that. Okay, so I think, Lewis, I'm happy to hand over to you.
Okay.
Let you begin. So I'm spotlighting you, and I am making you the. Oh, I'm going to try and do this. You are now the host.
Okay. And of course, that's shorthand for somebody flashes me this little note, say, please let me in. It's my job as host to hit the button and open the gate. I did not always know that, but I know
Yes.
it now. So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for taking some of your time to share in this adventure. I call it an adventure because even though we all have different times and we're the student or the teacher, we're all just sort of on the spiritual bus right now in a whole new realm of energies and experiences and ideas. And this particular time, in fact, today in particular, is a wonderful opportunity to talk about divine consciousness, specifically through the lens of what we call Christ consciousness, which we probably all have thoughts about, and something that I call Buddhic consciousness, which you may not be as familiar with. Before I get into that, let me give a little more information about the astrology of the day and of the time, because it sets a very important backdrop, for us to experience this class. Because remember that you're hearing the words that come through me. You'll be hearing the words that come through Joshua. There's so much more going on in this transmission. To any of you that have a third eye, even somewhat open, I invite you to watch the colors. So many energies flowing as the angels, the masters, the guides that work with all of us are very busy making the most of this connection. That's probably a separate interesting class, Joshua, to talk about the unseen world that is constantly unfolding, particularly when our outer consciousness is engaged in metaphysical discussion or experience. Yeah. It gets very bright and shiny. Okay, a little bit about astrology. So Joshua mentioned new moon in Aquarius. New moon, of course, the heavens are relatively quiet. It's a wonderful time for new beginnings, a wonderful time to set intentions as we start a new 28-day lunar cycle. Aquarius, of course, is an air sign, really connects to our mental aspects. It's also the sign of the visionary, the innovator. Now, what's particularly cool about this particular time is that it's something called a stellium, which is when 3 or more planets are in a particular astrological sign. In our case, we've got the sun, we've got Mercury, we've got Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and the moon, all in Aquarius. Wow, a lot of pretty powerful frequencies. And I'm told that the sort of zone of influence is from about February 1st to February 18th, which today being the peak. So this morning I'm thinking about all this, and I'm thinking, what the heck does this mean practically? And my unseen friends dropped a phrase into my head, which I'll share with you. The Constellation of Wonder. It's like, what the heck are you talking about? And what they explained over the next few hours off and on is that from heaven's point of view, even though we on earth look up at the stars and we just are amazed at what's out there, they look down at all the souls of earth and they see us as a constellation incarnated. They see each of us as a piece of the starscape of the divine expression of life on this planet. And when they said a constellation of wonder, what they meant was, right now, even though it's hard to see it sometimes if you're watching the latest impeachment trial news, there's a wonderful set, billions of thought forms, of possibilities, of probabilities in the consciousness, the mind and heart of embodied humanity, which are poised to express something more beautiful and wonderful than we've seen in quite some time. This whole year, 2021, is a year of possibilities. The other phrase they gave me representative of the energy of the day is just 3 words, which I really like. The phoenix rises. This is a wonderful energy to really connect to our higher aspects and express it. The other thing that I'm not sure if she's on or not, our resident astrologer, Rhonda Hughes, wanted me to point out that another thing happening today astrologically is the sun and moon are in conjunction with a particular asteroid called Pallas Athena. Well, for those of you who are familiar with Greek astrology, or Greek mythology, I should say, Pallas Athena is the goddess of wisdom. And of course, also, she's one of the goddesses that was shown to me years ago in connection with the divine feminine. So this is, once again, just a great time to get in touch with the balanced frequencies of male and female within us as we open our minds and hearts to new ideas. Joshua, anything? I know you actually work with astrology routinely more than I do. Anything you want to add to any of that?
I love what you're saying, and please go on.
Okay. All right, so before we get into Christ consciousness, Buddhic consciousness, let's talk about divine consciousness in general. Now, obviously, books and books and books and libraries and just reams of material for thousands of years have been written about it. So let me just make it as simple as I can. An image was given to me years ago that I refer to as the diamond of truth. So in your mind's eye, I want you to imagine just a beautiful, clear diamond with many, many facets. Now imagine that each of those facets is a particular teaching that came to earth through a particular teacher. Maybe it's the Buddha. Maybe it's the Master Jesus. Maybe it is Krishna, and on and on. So each of these facets is this very beautiful spiritual expression that is itself amazing, great depth. And yet when you back up and see how everything dances together, you have a larger sense of the larger truth that we're a part of. Well, what I put to you is you could use the same image of the diamond of truth if you try to understand divine consciousness. And just two of those facets are what I'll be talking about tonight, even though each facet is immeasurably broad, the Christ, the Buddha. So I hope that just sort of sets things in context, perhaps. And then, of course, what would this topic be if you didn't have a little bit of mystic strangeness? So, oh gosh, probably 2 weeks ago, I am on the phone with a friend of mine, minding my own business, and they dropped something interesting in my head that I wanted to share. Something they refer to as the Arithmetic of Unity. And the equation is very simple. 1 + 1 = 1. Well, my left brain at this point kind of goes, what? So I asked for some clarification. And here's what they explained. Basically, as above, so below. But not just in terms of reflection, in terms of an actual expression. So pretty much every single person you see as you walk through your world, every man and woman, every child, is a reflection of you. Not just psychologically, not just in potential, but from a larger spiritual reality. And similar, if you think about any saint you've ever heard of or admired, any spiritual being, any goddess, any god, any master, every single one of them is a reflection of your own spiritual brilliance, your true spiritual nature. And that's what divine consciousness is starting to recognize that we are truly parts of the whole. So again, hope that gives you a frame of reference. I thought that was kind of cool. So Joshua, anything to add about divine consciousness in general before I get into a lot of specifics?
So much. So much.
All right, now, all right, now control yourself, okay?
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Yeah, no, to the point that I feel I would just be rambling. So I'm going to let you go on, Lewis.
Okay. Now, just know, I'm not going to let you get away with that for much of this class. I do want to hear from you. So, all right. So let's start talking about something that may be a little familiar, at least from a Christian point of view. I should say a broad-minded Christian point of view. What is Christ consciousness? And again, my perspective, my thoughts. It's at best incomplete, but hopefully it'll give us some spiritual breadcrumbs to work with. The Christ means the anointed one. It is an expression of love and compassion. And I think in terms of our consciousness, in terms of the evolution of our deliberate conscious awareness, it really is talking about to what degree we perceive, accept, and work with our divine identity. To what degree are we willing to recognize, not just mentally, but experientially, that there's so much more to me than this. So much more to what I define as Lewis Purdy. So much more. So what I was told is that level 1 of Christ consciousness, I get specific with my unseen friends. I say, look, I need a definition. It might be incomplete, but I need a place to start. So this is what I've got. We are connecting to Christ consciousness to the degree that we are aware in mind, body, and heart of our divine identity as children of the One and co-creators with the Almighty. And 2, or B, expressing that awareness in our daily lives. So to get your brain wrapped around that a little bit, let me ask you some questions. If somebody was to just come out of the blue, you know, you're in the store and somebody just walks up and turns you around, looks at you and smiles and says, "Who are you?" What would you say? We are sons, we're daughters, we're husbands, we're wives, we're mothers, we're fathers, we're employees, we're citizens. And yet, is that what any of us are? Aren't they roles? What we might discover if we ask who are we is that we don't get to who we are at all. We get to the masks that we wear. And we wear a lot. The hats we wear a lot. And there's nothing wrong with any of them. The thing is that they're incomplete. And they are an illusion. And we'll get to that when we get to the Buddhic consciousness piece. So since there's so much more to us than our physical body, so much more to us than what I call our human personality, which is our thoughts, our feelings, our memories, our identity, if you will, in the mortal sense. What then is this whole idea of connecting with Christ consciousness? It's the idea that we have the ability, if we choose, and of course, everything that happens metaphysically starts with intent, we choose to be open to the idea that there's more to me than I thought there was. And I want to see that. I want to feel it. And again, it starts with intention. If the Christ is all about love and compassion, if love is not only the glue that holds creation together, not only the reason that creation started, if you can put creation in a temporal line, but it's also the reason it continues. Because what I was taught, what I've experienced, is that creation is not an event. Creation is an ongoing decision by that which is divine to exist. And as co-creators, we get to basically shape our reality day to day by our thoughts, our feelings, our choices, our words, our actions. And usually we are blissfully unaware of just how much we're shaping. The phrase that was given to me years ago is, ignorance is only blissful for the ignorant. I put to you, everybody on this call, we are working our way out of that particular box, at least to the degree we can. Now, the other cool thing about this, even though this is a little frustrating to my logical brain, I was told that what I was just talking about is only level 1 of Christ consciousness, and there are many other levels. And I said, well, what are the other levels? And they laughed at me. And they said, you're just barely being able to get your finger around, your toe in the water of level 1. We'll talk later. Well, of course, me being the persistent sort, I hound them a bit. So what they told me is, imagine that you did not see yourself as a child of God. We're not talking about offspring, father, mother, child. Imagine if you recognized you were God. A very focused, narrowly expressed piece, and yet, much like a hologram, connected to the whole. Well, of course, at that point, my left brain went offline, and I stopped asking those questions. But still, gives you some food for thought. All right, so Joshua, you're not allowed to get off the hook here. When I say Christ consciousness, what does that mean to you?
Well, I'm actually gonna just pounce on something you said before that.
Okay.
And this question, this conversation maybe about who am I? I forget who it was, and I think it may have been Ramana Maharshi. Said ask yourself who you are and keep on going. And when you run out of an answer, you will have the answer. And I love that, because I think I tried it once, or I've tried it twice. I actually couldn't get to 50, and or I was getting close to 50, but it was the sort of answers you think I'd be giving at that point, you know. But you know, I hear what you're saying about your left brain going offline, because at that point we've run out of the vernacular to describe the experience, don't we? And of course, that's when we're closer than ever. Christ consciousness, when I think about it, we're talking about totality there, absolute, I don't even like the words, peak potential of our spiritual human existence, the most and possibly infinite. You've heard everyone, now you all heard words to that effect before. The point is, we're talking about walking the experience here. And the image I get is, now I'm a musician, so I've sat at a sound desk before with lots and lots of little switches and dials and lights and knobs and things like that. The trouble with the conversation about Christ consciousness is we think it's like all going on one level, and it's not. It's going on in all directions like this, and different aspects and attributes. And I can't show you my labyrinth right now, but it's the best example I can give you of that. This is not going on in a linear path. It's going on several at the same time. How much of one we allow in, and how much of its opposite we either acknowledge and heal, suppress for the time being, and what is the deciding process between which we allow ourselves to either go this way or go this way? Because sometimes this way is appropriate, it's elevating. Sometimes going this way is sugarcoating, it's bypassing. Too much?
No, it's great. I'm remembering a song. Unfortunately, I can't remember the artist, but the song is entitled "You're So Light."
Oh yes, by what's his name? I know. It was
Yeah.
This is a song set to the tune of "You're So Vain."
Yeah.
Well,
The one verse I remember is, and pardon me, folks, I'm not trying to cause any damage to your cerebral cortex here. You're so light. I bet you think you're close to ascending. And it's like, okay.
it's set to the tune of "You're So Vain."
Oh, it's really quite, it's quite entertaining. Because if you think about it, so many folks that get involved in metaphysics at some point, they haven't gotten to the point yet where they recognize that our real treasure is in the dark. It's really in the pain points, in the fear packages, that our lessons and our fuel for even further growth is just waiting for us to uncover. You know, we go for all the fluffy bunnies and, astral butterflies. It's like, okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a little more to the dynamic than what was in that first brochure that you read. Yeah. So anyway.
But anyway, I think let's go on a bit further with the fluffy bunnies.
Fair enough. Okay, so as I said before, I think Christ consciousness, at least in the Western world, where metaphysics, much like Unity, for example, has very much of a Christianity base, however broad-minded. Now let's go to the other side of the planet. We'll go to the Eastern world, and let's talk about Buddhic consciousness. Because what I've discovered, at least in my own experiences, my own connections, is that's becoming more and more important. Because it's more and more important for each of us individually to perceive the illusions that shape our experience, look beyond them so we connect to our divine identity, our divine capabilities, and then make even clearer, more beautiful, more joyful choices, because that's how we save the world. In case you haven't noticed, nobody's coming to save us. We've shown up to save ourselves. We are all part of our own rescue team. And of course, when I say we, I also mean all those gods and goddesses, all those saints, all those sages, all those spiritual masters that we know and love across every religion in human history. Okay, so let's talk about the Buddha. It means the awakened one, the enlightened one. If the Christ focus, from my perspective, is love and compassion and divine identity, then the focus on the Buddha is more wisdom, illumination, the vibration of truth. Now remember, wisdom is an interesting word. Wisdom, be very simple, is a combination of knowledge and experience. You can't get wisdom until you've actually tried out the rules of the road and discovered that they work. And the thing about the Buddha, you think about the historic Buddha, aka Siddhartha Gautama, who was basically a philosopher, spiritual teacher, a religious leader who lived around, 4th to 5th century before the Common Era over in India. He was an embodiment. He was dealing with all of the illusions of wealth and wonder that the rich and powerful are heir to, and he decided, I'm thinking that there's something better, because he wanted to understand the cause of suffering. The traditional story of Siddhartha is that he was a prince, and his father sheltered him from pretty much everything that he thought would distract him from his destiny as a ruler of men. And at some point, he was exposed to death, to disease, to suffering, and he asked, well, why? And that sent him on a journey. And at some point, he discovered enough to looked beyond all the illusions of this world, and connected to his spiritual self, his spiritual life. And that really is what became traditional Buddhism as it still exists. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The Buddha is worshipped as the enlightened one. He is thought to have transcended karma, which is the dynamics of action and consequence. He's thought to have escaped something called samsara, which is this cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that we're all engaged in. He's the founder of Buddhism. At the moment on the planet, there's three main streams of thought about Buddhism. And this, yes, this is becoming a 10 to 15 minute crash course in Buddhism because it's just such an essential foundation. And so many of us in the Western world, they don't necessarily know that much about it. There's something called Theravada Buddhism, which is really the original monastic form from the very early period. And it really doesn't involve any connection to spiritual beings at all. It's all based on meditation, on ethical living, on the decisions that we make as human beings in terms of what to do with our consciousness and our life to take us out of illusion and into the real. There's something called Mahayana Buddhism, which is where the idea of, in the name of love, working for the liberation of all comes from. Mahayana also connects to all the bodhisattvas, the great beings that are on the path to becoming a Buddha themselves. Like, for example, beloved Lady Kuan Yin, Goddess of Mercy, the sort of Eastern equivalent of Mother Mary, and so many other great Buddhas in various Eastern traditions. And then finally, there's something called the Vajrayana, which is Tibetan Buddhism. Now, that's kind of cool because they focus on something called the Diamond Way. They have this idea that we are able, if we're willing to do work, to connect to the light of truth and literally be illuminated as one would be hit by a lightning bolt without the turning to ash part. And that to me is pretty interesting. That Tibetan school also is the school that really works with some of the tantric ideas, the idea of working consciously with masculine and feminine energy to find more balance, more connection to higher states of consciousness. So the Buddhist teachings were really based on insights he had about the nature of suffering and what you do about it. How you reach to the point where there is no suffering, what they call nirvana. So I want to share just super brief. I'm doing pretty well. It's only 7:32. Something called the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. This is sort of the core of traditional Buddhism, and you'll see why it's relevant soon enough. So super quick, the Four Noble Truths. Now, also as a frame of reference, pretty much anything I'm talking to you about, well, in fact, I guess this is true for anything I talk about in any of our classes, I'm only scratching the surface. So please, if something captures your attention, something grabs your interest, make a note and then go Google it, go research it. There's so much out there. And of course, you have to use your own discernment because it's not all true, but isn't that what you're practicing doing anyway? Four Noble Truths. Number one, suffering. Bottom line, life always involves suffering, period. If you've gotten to the point where you have zero suffering, you probably won't be on the planet very long. Noble Truth two, the cause of suffering. From the Buddha's perspective, two main things cause suffering: desire and ignorance. Desire in the sense that we seek things outside of ourselves to fulfill ourselves, even though that's a complete illusion from their perspective. And ignorance, you don't know what you don't know. Noble Truth three, the end of suffering. And here's the good news. Suffering is always temporary because that inner divine mind is always available to us if we care to look for it, if we care to find it, if we care to become it. And finally, what is the path? And again, as I mentioned before, traditional Buddhism really doesn't embrace any spiritual beings or spiritual reality as such. They talk about this idea of living ethically, practicing meditation, working with something they call the Eightfold Path is really the path to wisdom. Things like right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, that kind of thing. Those are the parts and parcel of this traditional Buddhist idea. All right, so that is Buddhism in 7 minutes, not too bad. Again, a lot more available if you're interested. So much like I did with Christ consciousness, I asked them for a definition for Buddhic consciousness, and they warned me up front, this gets much more squishy because you start to get into the realm of the mystical. And what is mysticism? It is really the experiencing the divine. It's not hearing about it. It's not knowing about it in the mental sense. It's not even about feeling it. It's about experiencing it. And just as a future tease, at some point within the next couple months, Joshua and I are going to be teaching a class on the modern day mystic, where we're going to get under the hood about how one might do this in the midst of the workaday world. Okay, so I asked for my definition. Here's what they say. We're connecting to Buddhic consciousness to the degree that we, A, are aware in mind, heart, and body of quote-unquote reality, while physically incarnated, and B, expressing that awareness as we interact with others in the midst of challenges, opportunities, and the situations of everyday life. And they purposely put reality in quotes. Of course, then my logical brain says, excuse me, I think I missed the part of that definition I'd actually understand. Care to flesh that out? So here's what they said. What question might you ask if you want to connect to the Buddhic consciousness? Well, much like with the divine identity issue from the Christ perspective, you asked, who am I? The question is, what is real? Think about your own feelings about who you are. Think about what other people think of you. What's real? Now, the thing about the illusion, the idea of illusion, is it doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean it doesn't have energy. It doesn't mean it doesn't affect us. We're surrounded by billions of illusions every day, and it has a very palatable effect on our experience in the Earth School. But what it means is it's not ultimately sustained and supported by a consciousness 100% aligned with divine love. And we all have lots of illusions, a lot of self-concepts, a lot of concepts about other people, about our relationship to them, that simply aren't true, and yet it's what we believe. And because it's what we believe, it's what we give our energy to, it becomes our reality. So this idea of seeing the real from practical perspective means a few things. It means we look to see within and beyond, and I'll throw out a few words for you, something called Maya, M-A-Y-A, which is just a word for illusion. But in particular, the illusion about who we really are, our divine nature. Do you really recognize that you're a divine being having a human adventure? What does it even mean to you? We learn to look within and beyond something called Mara, M-A-R-A. It's desire. One of the stories about Siddhartha when he was getting ready to be enlightened, you know the story about him sitting under the Bodhi tree. The last thing he has to encounter in order to reach enlightenment is he has to contend with Mara, the Lord of desire. Mara and his daughters, greed, avarice, selfishness, and the like. And he has to look at them and realize they're simply not real. And I know I've said this before for people who have been other classes with Joshua and I, but it's just one of my favorite movies. There's this little movie called, oh, that's right. All right. Thank you so much. They went right out of my head. It stars Keanu Reeves. It's about, I think it may be called The Little Buddha. Do you remember what the name of it is, Joshua?
You know, it's funny because I'm thinking about a totally other Keanu Reeves film right now, now that you say that.
The Matrix?
No, with Ashley Judd.
Don't know that one off the top of my head.
Maybe we table this conversation.
It'll come back to us. Anyway, just look up Keanu Reeves and look up the Buddha in Google, and you'll see a movie. Anyway, in there at one point, he is faced with all these demons of desire and illusion. He looks right at them and very calmly just says, "You are not even real. The earth is my witness." And you just watch them all just fade into nothing. There we go. Thank you, the little Buddha. Thank you, Peter, who is also known as Holly. Thank you. All right. So as we're working with this idea of reality, if desire and ignorance cause suffering, then seeing reality does some very important things for us and brings us peace and understanding through the following mechanisms. First off, it reminds us that we're connected, that we're never alone, that we couldn't be alone if we wanted to be alone. It's simply not possible. Now, you might not perceive those you're connected to. It doesn't change the fact that you're not alone. Secondly, we're supported. Every single one of us is connected to an abundance that we can't even understand and have barely tapped. It's like having a bank account with 20 zeros worth of energy in there. That's what we're all connected to. Thirdly, we're loved. If you had any idea, if I had any idea of just how much we're loved, not by accident, not by some uncaring mechanism of a universe, but by a divine consciousness presence expression that spans galaxies, that spans universes, and knows everything about us and loves us intensely, personally, at the subatomic level. And finally, the concept that we are always evolving, that we make progress every life, every experience, whatever our ego may judge, that we are on the path. And we just have to continue to walk it. The question is, will you walk it asleep? And if not, to what degree will you be awake? So those are some thoughts about Buddhic consciousness. Joshua, anything to share, add there?
At this point, no. I'm going to share later on.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I ask everybody to please find handout 1. And let me see if I can remember how to share this screen. And well, I guess I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way and actually share the screen itself and go find it. There it is. Nope, that is not it. Pardon me, folks, while I go and open this up again. There we go.
Perfect.
All right. Awesome. All right. So this is something that was given to me quite a few years ago. It's something I call the Dharma Wheel of Truth. So what is Dharma? Very simply put, Dharma simply means an aspect of ultimate reality of truth. So this Dharma Wheel is the Dharma Wheel of Truth. And it contains something that I was told was called the 8 divine virtues. So many years ago, I asked the folks that work with me, I said, look, I need a way to just very simply understand, what am I working with as I try to evolve out of my often fear-based human personality into a divine expression of some higher aspect of God consciousness? What does that look like? And this is what I was given. That symbol in the middle is the symbol for just the universal divine presence that's in all things and in every moment. And the 8 divine virtues, starting with love and compassion at the top and moving around: grace, peace, purity, unity, justice, balance, humility. Those are one way of expressing some of the core values, the core virtues, the core elements, if you will, of our divine identity. And they're meant to counterbalance something that you could call the 7 deadly sins and the great lie. Because as we learn very quickly, we can't really understand the reality of light if we don't perceive and experience the illusion of the dark. So each of these is part of a pair. And let me just go through them real quick. Love and compassion is the positive opposite to greed, fear, and hate. Grace is the positive opposite to envy. Peace, positive opposite to wrath, aggression, domination. Purity, positive opposite to lust. Not just in a sexual sense, anything we might lust after because somehow we feel we're incomplete without it. Unity is the positive opposite to selfishness, judgment, prejudice. That's what I refer to as the great lie. You know, this idea that we are separated from, and you fill in the blank. The idea that we are limited and cannot do, and fill in the blank. These are all part of the illusion of matter. You know, and in a sense, when we descend into matter, we descend into incarnated form, we purposely forget all this stuff, so that in the process of remembering it experientially, it becomes more real than it ever was. Justice, the positive opposite to sloth. Balance, the positive opposite to gluttony, where you can never get enough. And finally, humility, positive opposite to balance, to pride and arrogance. So, as you can imagine, these 7 deadly sins and the great lie really are a fairly comprehensive way of understanding everything that's wrong with the world, everything that's wrong with humanity. The irony is, you have to put that wrong in quotes, because that wrong is actually the dynamic of teaching, dynamic of learning, that we purposely have all constructed and are maintaining as we learn our lessons. Joshua, did you have any specific question? That's the simplest I know how to explain the 8 divine virtues.
No, you've explained that, you've spoken to it beautifully, and there's so much to say here. And it's like I do want to say something here. The experience of being a human, whether we isolate it down to this incarnation, or all of them all together, all of mine, all of yours, all together, right? It's like there's a master craftsman that takes a rough tree trunk and slowly over time carves a beautiful sculpture or scenery, you know, like like you would find in Thailand, exquisite scenery out of just one block of wood. And had I been talking about this, Lewis, I would have said exactly what you said in terms of it's what's wrong with humanity, right? The 7 deadly sins. I would have put it in those words. And I think just important to bring in at this point is that we are in a continuum, and what is wrong with humanity is a lot less wrong. It's a lot more right than it has been in the past, because we're in this point of evolution. We're just not at a complete point of evolution. We are at the point that it's almost mainstream to talk about this. I think, you know, the frustration I've got right now is, oh, we should have spent the whole time talking about this. No.
I'm not quite done with this yet.
Yes,
So.
yes. And so I'm there again with there is a balancing act in the spiritual life, of which we're going to focus on for right now. Is it going to be as we say, the 7 deadly sins? Is it going to be the 8 heavenly virtues? And the appropriate words are right now, because sometimes something's got to be dealt with. It's got to be unfurled. We take a day like today, and or it's not today. It's a bit of yesterday. It's a bit of tomorrow. You know, of course, it's the new moon. You take a day like today in this alignment, and we're being supported to ease and to let go of struggle. What do you get with struggle? You get suffering, don't you? What do you get with less struggle and less suffering? You get more of whatever you can see on the screen right now. Be interesting to see where your eyes fall, isn't it? All right, I'm gonna just hit pause on my brain right now.
Okay. So one of the things that Joshua and I like to do is to give people tools to work with. You can listen to this recording, you'll get more information, you'll get a blast of the frequencies that are coming through. Yes, that's true. However, nothing really replaces some good old-fashioned spiritual tools. So I share with you the idea that this first handout, if you were to print it out in color, and of course you could also just have it up on a screen, but print it out in color so it's tangible. It becomes a mandala that you can start to work with. Imagine as you look at it that you're literally seeing one very simple expression of your divine identity, a way that that divine identity can express for your human consciousness, your human thoughts and feelings, your choices, what you share with the world as you move through it. So imagine that you focus on this and literally connect, you know, with mind and heart, third eye, heart center, with the center of that mandala. And you literally breathe in these virtues, because these are not just theories. These are very tangible spiritual forces. And each one of them is supported by some very interesting archangels that we'll talk about in a minute.
Lewis?
Yes?
You, forgive me, can we just take a pause and allow people to do that?
Sure.
So not going to say anything other than these few words, just literally pause, stop, and breathe in. Breathe into your third eye, your heart, what you can see in front of you. Right, well, that's going to keep on going, so I think you can...
Okay. So imagine as you're focusing on this and you're absorbing these very real blessings, that all you're saying, the affirmation, if you will, and there's a lot you could come up with, but the simplest one is, I am that I am. And you simply allow this expression, these words and what they mean, to just soak in. And every time you find yourself caught up into one of those 7 deadly sins, and we all have our moments, as we're taught in terms of dealing with negativity, you identify the negative pattern, then you identify the positive opposite, and you focus on that. So if I'm feeling really upset, really anxious, really squirrely about something, I acknowledge it, then I focus on peace. Why can I focus on peace? Because God is my source. God is my sacred self. God is that which I am. And to the degree that you accept it, you experience it. Okay. Now also, while we're still looking at this, I direct your attention to handout 2, which is something called the Invocation of 8 Divine Virtues. This is a version of a prayer that I wrote quite a few years ago. And again, the idea is to give you some tools. So this is a very simple prayer that you can work with yourself. It talks about the 8 divine virtues and the archangels that support them. And it invites you to literally become an anchor point and a lighthouse of those energies to flow into the world. For those of you who have been on previous calls, also connects to the largest grid that I have built and been working with for over a decade, the Ascension Harmonics grid that's in my home and my sanctuary. And again, by working with this prayer, it's a way to literally help support some activities that are unfolding all humanity in these 8 divine virtues, these blessings, even if they are completely unaware of them consciously. So I invite you to look at that handout 2, look at that prayer, read it through it, see if it calls to you or speaks to you, and then work with it as you're led to do. But I did want to put something in your hands that gave you the information about some of the archangels and some of the more sort of powerful connections you can make with these virtues in a way that was relatively easy to absorb and work with. Okay. I'm impressed. It is only 7:52. I did not know I'd blow through this stuff so quickly. Joshua, anything to add about any of this, or any questions you want me to explore, or anything else you want to give before we take a break?
No, I think let's take a break now. So you want to just unshare, make me the host, and I'll pause the recording.
All right, so I can stop the sharing and remind me how to do the host thing.
Okay, so find me on the right.
I see you. I got it. You have the ball, sir.
Okay, so I'm just going to hit pause, and we're back. So, Lewis, you good for me to continue from this point?
Yes, sir.
Super. Okay. So let's just recap a bit. So here we are on the new moon in Aquarius. We've got Stellium. We've got a balancing of the masculine and the feminine happening. We're talking about divine consciousness. We're talking about the Buddhic consciousness. We're talking about the Christ consciousness. We're talking about the 8 heavenly virtues and the 7 deadly sins so far. How's that for recapping an hour of our lives there? Yeah, right? So the mapping the seven, let's just call them 7, to the 8. I love that model. It works. It really can work. Now here's the small snag. I don't think anyone or any one of us, and certainly not me, is walking around going, I feel some envy. I'm going to switch that to grace or whatever it is. We don't think like that. I wish we did. Or if we lived in a monastery and it was all we talked about and all we thought about, maybe we would be wired that way. But we're not. But we're not that we're not capable of it, but because of the hold, the pull, push, the squeeze, the whatever, that the tangible world has on us. And this is necessary. It's purposeful. It's absolutely purposeful. Because the world is the stage for our lessons to be learned upon. I love the 8 heavenly virtues. I often to myself joke that there we were once upon a time as spirit, looking, about to take our next incarnation, and we're like, yeah, this time we're going to do it. This time we're going to do it. We say to God, all right, ready, doing this, boom, boom, high fives all around, as spirit does, I'm sure. And God says, you sure about this? You know, you come back here whining every single time. And we're like, yeah. The blue planet. What could go wrong? They're all masters down there. They're literally light in form, able to have any and every experience they want. What could go wrong? And God says to us, you do say that every time. And when you get down there, you're going to forget all of this. And we're like, okay, we'll sell that a bit harder to us then. And God explains it's because we have this consciousness in us, and it's going to unfold more and more and more and more and more. A word that one of us, Lewis and I were going to mention at some point today is the word choice, of course, because it's the word, it's choice of this way or that way that depends how quickly it unfolds. And you all know that. Well, what I wanted to talk to you all about before we get into the meditation, and before Spirit speaks to us all, I want to speak to the anatomy of distraction. The anatomy of distraction. Because yes, I do actually believe that all of us, not just on this call, but all of us are and have the Christ consciousness. And my words are not doing it justice. We all have it, all of us on the planet, from the best to the worst, as it were. We all have it. So why are we often unhappy, and why are we often not getting to where we want to be? See, we're here on this call for spiritual purpose and for spiritual reasons. Not all of what's out there is guiding us in the right way. Some of that out there is guiding us in the wrong way. And I'm going to ask you all for your full attention right now. I'm going to ask for your full attention, which is something I really never do. But it's important to me that you understand why I'm saying this, because I want to talk about, not about what it is out there that distracts us. I want to talk about how they distract us, okay? Because the important thing is us, you. The important thing is us. First of all, why? Why does God let that happen? Why can't we all just be happy? Why can't we be happy? Well, we're here to grow, aren't we? And we are creatures that grow from and through resistance and challenge. It's how it goes in there. It's how it goes in there. I often lament that, but it's how it is. The beings that are assigned to us to distract us, that is to say, to do everything that's not one of the 8 heavenly virtues, they are assigned to us to make us stronger. They are actually, in terms of the hierarchy, in service to light. Not directly, but indirectly. Insofar as you, all of you, they are assigned to you to sharpen, to refine, and to hone your discernment. Now, I want to give you a very simple framework of how that happens. Okay, and the best piece of writing I've ever come across on this is a book called Dark Brothers, Dark Robes. Dark Brothers, Dark Robes. It's probably out there for free on the internet, but I want to speak to a part of it, which uses the model of the the 5 fingers. And can we just not split hairs? This is a finger right now, okay? The 5 fingers. So what does this represent? The thumb, first of all, it represents energy and will. It represents our ability to turn the other cheek, okay? Because if you think about how often you get bent out of shape about something, upset, irritated, any of the things Lewis mentioned there, envious, lustful, and it really starts to take you over, you lose the ability to, as it were, turn the other cheek, and then you start to join in. You look at how upset people are getting about the news these days, no matter what side you swing to, that's what's going on there. It's regarding energy and will. The forefinger is about, and by the way, if you want to write this down, write it down. I'm going to send you a schematic later on. But why I don't want to put a handout in front of you right now, because I'd rather you allow yourself to connect with which way you get, which one of these or ones of these that you get distracted with, okay? That's the purpose. The less distraction, the more the Christ consciousness, okay? That's why I'm talking about this. So, just start again. The thumb is about energy and will, ability to turn the other cheek. The forefinger is about faith. Faith in realities beyond what you can see, feel, and touch. You know, those times I think we've all had those times. We've lost hope, lost hope, lost connection, and we start to constrict on ourselves. And that's another way we get distracted from our colossal nature, by thinking that there isn't one. We've got the middle finger, which is about, not the middle finger like that, but we've got, this finger is representing self-image. Now, how this works, how they work through this one, is they make us want to be by ourselves, want to be self-reliant, want to think we can do things ourselves, and of course that can be one of the destructing forms of community. All of these, by the way, you can work them in reverse, can't you? As soon as you know about them. We've got the ring finger, which is about money. We've got the little finger, which is about sex. Now, I'm sure that one sits differently if you are the owner of a female body as opposed to the owner of a male body. But I think you get the point. With money and sex, different forms of energy. Okay, I think I can put my hand down now. I think you get the point. Where do these tests show up? Why do these tests show up? Remember, we're all spirit seekers, aren't we? We're choosing to hold a little bit more energy because we're interested in this kind of thing. We're letting ourselves grow, letting ourselves be tested. As your energy elevates and so on, so do the tests. We're supposed to have the tests in our lives. I'm not saying you're all going to have tests of lust and finances and so on. That's for one and some of us. We're supposed to have these tests, and we're supposed to recognize that they're tests and meet them in a balanced way, not fall into them, not be over distracted and so on. And so this is why I wanted to bring this up, because you start to talk about being angry. Well, are you going to join in, or are you going to rise above it? You have opportunities one has an opportunity to be integrous or out of integrity. Well, what are you going to do? The semantics of gluttony, of envy, sloth, and so on. These are excellent words to describe something, but it's not the semantics in which we think in. And so that's why I wanted to give you those 5 to let you know, just as there is, as Lewis said, just as we've got this bank account with what did you say, 8 figures? Anyway, a whole lot, 20 figures, he said, a big bank account. Just as we've got that, we've got something telling us we don't need it. We got something telling us we can get it elsewhere, and so on and so on. Because in my life as or spirit seeker, spiritual enthusiast. I've heard it time and time again. We're infinite beings. You know, you've heard that? We're infinite beings. It's all there. It's all there. And so, well, how do you get to it? Or what's in the way? And that's why I wanted to bring this up. To use some vernacular that Lewis was talking about there. You were talking about Mara. You're talking about the treasure in the dark. This is not, just to be explicitly clear with you, I am not interested in darkness for the sake of darkness. I'm interested in knowing what is there that I'm tripping over because I want to get to the light. Okay? This is where we want to get you to the light, and more of it and for longer. If there's stuff that is upsetting you, causing you anguish, causing you suffering, it's to know how you respond to it. Are you willing to actively have more of it so that you can break it apart, so that more light can shine through the cracks, as Rumi says? Are you willing to do that? And you can usually find the loose limb, as it were, on one of those. Whether it's energy, whether it's energy, whether it's faith, whether it's self-image, whether it's money, whether it's sex or lust in some way. Lewis, do you want to speak to anything that I've just said there?
Yeah, just want to point out one thing. We talk a lot about balance, and one of the illusions is this idea that light is balanced by dark and vice versa. And I just share the idea that, like Joshua just alluded to, that's not really what's true. There's really just light. And then there's the degrees of lack of awareness of it, which slowly leads to the illusion of dark. And the reason I say it that way is because if you understand, in the heart of whatever we fear the most, the divine is still there. In the heart of our most painful memory, our most painful experience, in the heart of the lesson that we run screaming from, the divine is still there. And my understanding of the larger pattern, the larger plan, the larger harmony, the larger grace that we're immersed in every moment is that things aren't brought to our attention until we're ready to do something positive with them. Learn something, let go of something that no longer serves us, maybe just a little bit. Make some progress. So I just encourage all of us, and I'm definitely speaking to myself and my brother, when the things show up in this energy right now, and they're going to, that represent unresolved issues or unlearned lessons or untried potentials, recognize it's showing up in perfect timing. So take a breath and just ask, please help me to discern what is mine to learn. And may I learn my lessons with ease and grace. With something that simple, that intention, it can make a real difference. That's it, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me say as well, how it's not just appreciative I am, but I want to say in a very real way, fine, appreciative will do fine. How appreciative I am that there are the ears to hear this. A lot of people, what do you call them? What do we call them? Healers, light workers do not want to hear the D word. They want to hear that, don't want to talk about the shadow. But we're going big here. We're talking about divine consciousness, actualizing it more and more and more, I should say, rather than actualizing it. We say more and more and more. That's the real trajectory we're on. More and more and more every day. And we have this opening today with the new moon, and what it brings out of us to have that more and more and more. Okay, so I'm just feeling the energy growing more and more and more. So I would like to take us into the meditation and into the channeling now. Would you all like to get comfortable? I think today they're going to be channeling through me with my eyes open. So if you like to close your eyes, of course. If you'd like to receive through your eyes, then that is a That's there as well today. All right. Actually, just for this moment, let's have our eyes closed. And let's just be breathing naturally and calmly. And if you could imagine even the sound of 50 people breathing and the wave that would be created from that, I'd like you to join in with that. And in your mind's eye, I'd like you to see, please, the image of a wave or waves lapping the beach. And as the water climbs up the beach, you breathe in. As it returns to the ocean, you breathe out. And let's just bring our gaze and our attention to the actual body of water, to the surface. Again, breathe and breathe out. Let's bring our attention underneath the water. Underneath the water, where you also are water. No body at present, just water. Droplets within a vast, vast cosmic ocean, yet with a consciousness of your own, because you can see and you can look around and breathe. Breathe in and breathe out as the ocean swells. And now I would like you to, within this body of water, see your physical body. That is to say, you're now swimming in a body of water. I'd like you now to start swimming towards the shore. And as you reach the shore, and of course, becomes more shallow, you begin to walk out of the ocean upon beach with fine grains of sand. And I'd like you to lay down now. To lay down upon sand, to roll onto your side, to roll onto your front. And then to roll onto your back again. Where of course you will be caked with the grains of sand stuck to you from the water of the cosmic ocean. Just breathe as you allow the sun to give his rays to you. And just breathe. And slowly but surely, drops of rain begin to fall out of the sky and begin to cascade and dance upon you. And as they do so, the fine grains of sand begin to slowly become washed off you, allowing this energizing rain to permeate your skin, to cleanse you. And I would like you just to stand or to lay in this energizing rain for some moments. And it is so. Let us breathe together. Children, we smile for countless others. For hundreds of thousands. On your side of the veil and ours. We smile for those who will be brought out of the pit through your hands and your gestures and your choices. We smile for those our side of the veil. For we know what you can be, and we know what you are, and we know why you are there. Breathe, yes, breathe, please. How we sing and we pray for these occasions and these opportunities. I am Uriel, children. I am your angel of choices. Allow us to explain this meditation that you have just done. For you are born in and out of and by the ocean of Christ consciousness. It is you. And you choose periodically to come into form and the great gift that it is. For we cannot offer you from this side of the veil tactility and tangibility. And from where you are and the life you choose, yes, this one, this one. And you become caked and cloaked in the mara of illusion and challenge and struggle. And it is your choice to have done so. For truly the greater choice, children, is empathy and compassion, service, and lifting others, and elevating others. And you know this, and you know this. And so today, blessed children, we wash you, we cleanse you, we purify you for this next part of the journey. Indeed, yes, breathe that in. For your work in connecting to, as you will say, divine consciousness. This work will be your soul's evolution into eternity. And what a joy. And what a joy. And indeed, yes, we will speak to this notion of distraction, that you may have less of it, that you may become adept and more so in recognizing it, and that you may steer others and your sisters and your brothers away from it, toward themselves, towards ease and grace, forgiveness, clarity, purity. For you have been given the notion of the hand and the 5 fingers. And we ask you now to create a mudra. Please now create a mudra, however you will, does not matter. And have your hands at rest upon your lap. Do not wish discomfort for you. Look at the hand, the finger that you have chosen to connect your thumb with. We will not say that this is your greatest area of lesson, rather that at this time it is. Now, with both hands, please. Now, keeping our gaze. Yes, for we are one, are we not? Please cycle through the fingers as so, and you will notice that the thumb meets each one, does it not? For within the lesson of the thumb here is your ability to choose, yes, to have more of the light or to have more of its constriction thereof. But this is how we wish you to see the shadow and the dark. It is a constriction, a diminishment of light. And a simple exercise that you can do is to cycle through the fingers. For on occasion, you will feel a sharpness, a constriction, and this will be, you'll notice that there is a test, and you can bring your awareness to it, and you can excel at it, and you can graduate it. For children, we have seen you lost for eons. We do not wish to see you lost. When you are lost to anger, to vitriol, to lust, to sadness, and on and on and on. When the duration at any one time exceeds 17 seconds, it will impede your well-being. We say this that you may have a greater cognizance and awareness of time, that you may catch yourself. And each time that you do so is the greatest divine victory. Yes, victory. It is a cause for celebration. Remember, we smile. We who support you, smile. Those who you support, smile. And we are one. Beautiful children, bring your hands to your beautiful heart. And allow yourself to receive this promise from us. And we do promise less struggle from this day. How will you notice this? How will you gauge this? It will be in the question which you will ask yourself and you will ask us before you go to a body, a project, a situation which causes you to diminish. You will ask yourself the question, need this be as hard as I want to make it? I think you will smile when you receive your answer. We shall step out of this body for now. And yet we remain by your side, loyal. Breathe, children. Your light is inextinguishable.
Wow. Thank you for that, Joshua. Thank you, beloved Uriel. So while our brother is coming down to earth and grounding a little bit, let me just share a few final thoughts. I always like to put a practical spin on what we talk about, because if you can't apply it in your everyday life, what we're here for. So all the things that we've shared about, all the things we've talked about, all the things that have been shared frequency-wise that aren't necessarily words, what does all of it matter? Because every single one of us is part of the evolving group consciousness of humanity. And the choices that we make, the way we choose to live every day matters. We have the opportunity now to work on very simple and yet core, profound qualities. Things like discernment. Are we able to learn to trust the intuitive voice within? When we look, read, hear, perceive, experience anything, and see it as much as we can through the lenses of spirit. Develop detachment. Just because there is drama and trauma and trial and terror, do we have to embrace it? Do we have to experience it? We can be empathetic and understand what the other person is going through. We don't have to be sympathetic to the point we resonate with it and it becomes our own, particularly the darker aspects. To cultivate balance, moderation in all things. I recently joined this, at least for me, amazing sort of diet support, nutritional awareness, behavioral modification program called Noom, N-O-O-M. I've only been on it for like a week and a half. It's full of all kinds of psychological goodness that really helps me. But what it does is it reminds me I have a choice. No matter what I've always done in any arena of activity, I can bring something to awareness. I can identify what is better for me, and I can choose it. And the way our minds work is the more you choose something, the more you do it without even thinking. So how about creating some positive, joyful, peaceful, loving habits in our minds and hearts? Finally, and Uriel talked about this, we are always an example of something. What do you want to be an example of? We're always being of service to something. Do you want to serve love and build that momentum, or something that's more fear-oriented? We get to choose. The last thing I want to mention is to build on something Joshua talked about when he talked about distractions and, to use a parallel word, temptation. As we look out in the world, we see billions of people that seem to have nothing to do with the 8 divine virtues, at least from where we sit. What's going on with that? I want to read something to you that my wife brought to my attention just within the last week. Some of you have heard us talk about Cryon, a wonderful sort of composite collective angelic being that speaks through a gentleman named Lee Carroll. He's been doing very inspired work for, 30, 40 years. Anyway, I just want to read this. This is something in his book 14 called The New Human. It's from page 150. It's called A Split of Consciousness. And this really speaks to what's going on in the world right now. And we're all a part of it. This is what he says. Very slowly, there's going to be a split of consciousness on the planet. And we've talked to you about this before. There will be those who are compassionate and those that are not. And it's going to be obvious, so obvious, caring and uncaring. There is a dark army right now on this planet. What is its quote-unquote compassion factor? Do you understand? It's a free choice state of mind. But that split is coming. But don't worry about this, compassionate one. And this is the paragraph that I want you to really hear. When you take the attributes of the master, light surrounds you. No more fortressing or protecting yourself from the dark. It will retreat from you automatically. No more catching the diseases of the day. They won't be able to touch you with compassion. It's physics. It's real. It's physical. It's happening right now. Your society will react sooner than you think. When you turn on your news, you'll think I'm crazy, but just wait. Some wild cards are coming. Benevolence is a new energy. Ever since we have passed through the 12-21-20 gate, this world is enfolded in that constellation of wonder that really supports us connecting to and living our highest and best options. Please believe it. And to the degree that you believe it, act on it. To the degree you act on it, you are literally helping to save the world. And isn't that what we're all here for, even as we grow? Because that's like the two halves of the coin. Growth on one hand, service on the other. So I thank all of you for participating in this just amazing, amazing sharing. I see we have a little bit of time. Joshua, is there anything else you want to talk about, or do you want to open it up for comments, or what would you like to do?
Oh, I think, let's just see if anyone's got any questions at this point. I'll remind you, you are on mute.
I had something interesting, Sarah. I've been studying yoga, and I have, 500 hours of teacher training, conscious minds, and things like that. And we were talking about the 8 Buddhist and Christian principles. And they're a little different, but in yoga, there's the 8 yamas. They are very similar, but slightly different in the way that you get to your consciousness. And the niyamas are more of what you guys were talking about tonight, whereas the humanity, the not stealing, and those, treating your neighbor as good as you treat yourself, that kind of stuff. So I just thought that was really interesting. It was the same amount of limbs. We call them limbs in yoga, and they're basically saying the same thing. Just as you put together that the Buddhist and the Christian things are kind of saying the same thing, and that's the global consciousness, in my opinion.
Yeah.
No, I agree completely. In fact, that's sort of a prelude to something else we'll be talking about, I hope, later this year. Imagine if in our lifetime we could start to experience what is going to become the new religion for the planet in this Aquarian frequency of freedom and equality and connection and understanding, where all the religions of the world, all the spiritual traditions of the world are like petals on one cosmic lotus that we're connected to. That's coming. And what they're starting to show me is how Buddhism, how Hinduism, how Christianity, how some of the aspects of the indigenous perspectives are all simply aspects of, quote unquote, the one truth, which of course is infinite. Can't get your brain wrapped around that, but you can get your brain wrapped around different gods, different goddesses, different aspects. And what if all of us could learn to perceive the connections as opposed to what's different?
Yeah.
Because we all have a lot more in common than we have at odds. And that's certainly true religiously, spiritually. So yeah, that's exciting. Thank you for mentioning that, Sarah. And I think a lot more is coming as people outgrow the old religions and connect to this new holistic reality.
Joshua, can you tell us the fingers again, what they stand for, real quick?
So the first finger, and I am going to send this out, Joelle. The
Okay.
first finger is about energy, energy, will, and self, and turning the other cheek. Okay. The first finger is about faith, and faith in realities above and beyond what the 5 senses can do. Okay. Middle finger, I've got to remember this, is self-image, and it would look like the difference between wanting to be by ourselves versus asking for support, something like that. The ring finger is about money. The 5th finger is about sex.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And to slightly, just speak to, I think, the essence of what Sarah was saying there is these things are found across disciplines because they come from the same place. Because we all come from the same place, don't we? Lewis, you've just given us beautiful parting words. I don't know that I need to do parting words after parting words, but I'm going to anyway. I wish for us all. In fact, I don't wish it. I know it for us all. It's just a function. It's the only variable is time here. I know for us all that we will all fall more and more and more and more and more and more and more in love with that consciousness which we're talking about right now. We call it Buddhic, we call it Christ, we split the difference, whatever. It's a good thing, right? Well, I know that we all will fall more and more and more in love with it, more and more and more. Bless you. And the more that happens, the more we want to stay on track. The more we want to stay on track, the less we get distracted, the less we get off course. And it's cumulative like that. And we have that in us. That's my parting words. Lewis, any parting words? Am I parting words? I'm joking.
Just want to thank all of you for being here. This being human evolution gets accelerated the more us in the physical plane actually pay attention to these things and work with these ideas, whatever that looks like, whatever your Dharma expression of choice might be. Whether you would never ever come to another one of these classes again, be true to yourself and do something that connects to and expresses that joyful brilliance within you. And just thank you for taking some time to share it with us tonight.
So I think let's say good night or good day, whatever, if you're watching the recording. Thank you for joining us, and I think we're aiming for the spring equinox for the next thing we're going to do. Let me just get the spotlight off. Let's just have a wave together.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
God bless everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye-bye.
night.
See you next
Thanks
time.
again.